Today's topic will be Anavar use in bikini competitions, or Anavar use in female athletes, or uh, whatever the hell you want to call it. And mainly we're touching up on this because of how popular it has become for athletes to talk about drug use. And more often than not, it's a bit, I can't say delusional. Uh, they don't seem like they understand what they are talking about. And I would like to really hear your opinion, who has come across these things with women way more often than most of the people, because of the focus of the clientele you work with as well. You know, you will know all the purpose for it, all the side effects, all the benefits, things that people probably overlook and might not even know unless they actually work with people face to face and get involved with these things. Maybe you could open up with what the hell is Anavar? Where does it come from? What was it originally designed for? And what do people use it for when they are trying to get ready for bikini shows? And is this only something for women? Maybe it's completely misunderstood.
Yeah, Anavar, the drug is Oxandrolone, has been around since the 60s, early 60s, I think. I think 62, maybe even. And like most derivatives of testosterone, or this is actually a derivative of the DHT, it was done for medical purposes originally. They use it in burn victims, muscle wasting diseases, post-surgical recovery. Of course, its benefits are its anabolic properties, which athletes quickly found out about. And then here we are. It's used all the time. It is a C17 alkylated derivative of DHT, which means it is now orally available. So you can take it. It survives the first pass through the liver, and then it offers its anabolic and androgenic effects. It also cannot aromatize to estrogen. I think its popularity in females is its lower androgenic properties. So once upon a time, they created this scale, the anabolic androgenic ratio, and they used testosterone as the baseline, 100 and 100. So basically, they did some measurements on like prostate. It was actually like I forget, it's in the road into the oh, I forget the actual muscle they measure, but it's equivalent to, say, the human male prostate, and they were looking at that would do its anabolic, or sorry, its androgenic effects, and then they were testing its anabolic effects via some stretch they did on the wings or something. I can't remember exactly how they created this ratio, but they derived at this 100 to 100 anabolic versus androgenic, and then every other derivative of testosterone was kind of compared to that 100 to 100 ratio. And Anavar scores very, very low on the androgenic side, like 30, 27 to 30, something like that. And 3 to 5, maybe even 6 times higher on the anabolic side. So in other words, it was offering very, very high anabolic properties and very, very low androgenic properties. So it seemed appealing for women. And they've been taking it. And for whatever reason now, though they've been taking it since day one, it seems like it's popular for these IFBB Pro bikini girls to all of a sudden admit and try to educate people on their Anavar use when probably there's really not a lot of education there, and they're probably offering some terrible, terrible advice. I've seen some terrible advice already. So it's just like you said, it's the first come, first serve thing. I like that. That was really good. They're just hopping on the bandwagon. Steroids are becoming popular, and it's with the popularity of TRT, everyone's almost admitting steroid use, but it's because they have to, because they're on TRT, and it's literally opening Pandora's box. Now people are abusing drugs even more, and certain IFBB pros that have created their physiques from drug use, all the while probably claiming natty, are now saying, "Oh no, this is Anavar, this is how you use it. It's very good, and TRT for women or HRT for women is very important, and blah 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 blah." And all we're going to see is problems, in my opinion.
So with this coming into play, like you said, it's probably used for a very long time. And let's be honest, even bikini chicks now look like bodybuilders used to look like in like 80s and 90s. So some of them are extremely hypermuscular. Is it because the drugs are better? Is it because they probably abusing those drugs? Is it because they use more than just Anavar? What's happening there? What do you see? And what are the risks coming with it? Because it sounds as if they can take this forever. Is that the case, or is it something that they need to look on? Maybe there is something that I really love, actually checking your health first. Is so where would you start assessing person's ability to even look into something like this? And when would you tell them, you know what, you don't even want to compete, you really don't need to touch this?
I think the evolution of the sport of bodybuilding, the reason that these categories are becoming more and more muscular is because a category was created, like I don't remember how many years ago it was now, where men's physique sort of came onto the scene. Um, and then the first dude wins the men's physique, trophy, and then that's the new category, and then that attracts a whole new demographic of people that aren't suited to be successful bodybuilders. And then the female categories kind of came up as well. Bikini came up. Well, bikini appealed to a lot of females that were just naturally um, lean and didn't want to be hyper muscular because they, thought it was too masculine or whatever. And then you have the champion, and the champion won with whatever PEDs she did or didn't use, depending on when she started. But then that champion has to defend her title, and so she has to continue to improve, and that look continues to evolve. And when you look back, and you can literally do this, just Google the Miss Olympia from the 70s, Miss Olympia from the 80s, Miss Olympia from the 90s, and you can watch her getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's just because she's continually using drugs. And like we talk about, like the seminar we just put on in Kitchener here, and the seminars we're always put on, and when I'm always speaking to the females, it's the duration of use that's the biggest danger, not so much as the dose. They both need to be considered, but the duration is very, very powerful, and it's insidious on its effects, on its negative effects that sneak up on these women. So before you know it, they have put on so much more muscle than they realize, or much more masculinizing characteristics than they realize, because it was such a slow onset. So I think the evolution of that is coming from they're constantly using drugs because they have to, because they're trying to defend their title or compete again, make top 10 or whatever. I mean, if you look at the bikini girls, so Miss Olympia, like we're going to be in Orlando next week watching this. The bikini girls that are going to be competing next week, they're very, very muscular. They're equally as muscular as yesterday's figure girls. And the figure girls are now like yesterday's female bodybuilders. And now the women's physique, they look like bodybuilders. And so it's just this evolution of, in my opinion, drug use constantly. But for whatever reason, now it's become popular to admit it. And so now we're seeing these bikini girls saying they use low dose Anavar, low dose this, low dose that. And they've been doing it all along. They had to have been. But now they're going to just be further promoting it and saying you can still, do this with these drugs. And they're almost, I don't want to say they're encouraging it, but they're not putting the truth behind it, because there are still dangers and concerns that women need to consider with anabolic steroid use, even if it's Anavar. Even what I would just found out, there's a compound floating around here called Ladyvar, and it's just a slightly lower dose Oxandrolone. It doesn't matter if these girls are going to continue to do 12-week preps, 12-week preps, or 16-week preps over and over and over, and constantly pushing Anavar in. They're going to get some virilization effects that they did not sign up for, because it's unavoidable. And if they don't have a proper structure in play to mitigate this and monitor things, they're almost certainly gonna wake up one day and go, "Fuck, what have I done?" And you see it all the time.
Yeah, I've heard as well term ladies Anavar, and you're like, what? So what are the side effects? What you said about lengths of use of this and that. So what would you usually expect? So from my personal experience is usually if they get carried away, first, before they go that route, they are talking about enlarged clitoris and whatever, that they are scared of that. But usually when they get that, they are really happy about that.
Yeah.
But they don't realize when they have pushed too far and they start growing beard and voice is gone and this and that. So what are the most common things that come, and can any of them be gotten, can they be taken care of? You know, like
Right.
voice and starting to sound like a 40-year-old smoker. You know, what about those things? What
So
are
I
the
present,
side effects, and can you deal with them in a way that they don't come back?
so I presented to females a few weeks ago here, and something I've been including lately, just because of the demographic of where I live, I've been including lately the medical definition of transgender therapy, hormonal transgender therapy, and what the doctor will give a female to literally turn her into a male. Um, and it's not a lot. It's like 50 milligrams ish of testosterone, kind of on a weekly basis.
Hmm.
And the hormonal treatment is anywhere from 3 to 5 years, approximately. All they're trying to do is establish male physiological hormonal ranges in a female. And then at that point, she's going to be about as male as she's going to be, give or take. So you think 3 to 5 years, weekly administration of testosterone. I mean, that's not a lot of drug when you think about what guys are doing, but that's a lot of androgenic exposure to a female.
Hmm.
And if you think about the bikini prep and they're taking Anavar, that's usually their go-to. That's usually the Pandora's box opens with Anavar. That's usually the one that everyone says, oh, it's the most female friendly. It's the one with the least problems and yada, yada, yada. And you're going to say 10 milligrams a day. Well, now you're taking 70 milligrams a week. Transgender therapy is giving you 50 milligrams a week. Bikini athlete's taking 70.
That's
Now,
like
admittedly,
only 70. I've had 50 a day.
oh yeah, I've heard more too. But if we're going to be err on the side of caution, they're going to give her 10. And maybe with Lady Var, I don't know, maybe that's 5. I don't know. Uh, but they're going to give her 10. So we're going to just go with 10. So you're going to take 70 milligrams a week. The transgender therapy is going to take 50 of testosterone. Now, admittedly, Anavar is less androgenic, but the female transgender candidate is looking to become a male. Like that's the goal. The bikini athlete is not even remotely interested in looking masculine, usually. So they're already should be thinking, well, this is not nothing. 70 milligrams a week is not nothing. In 12 weeks, nothing will happen unless you're an outlier. And I have seen an outlier. I actually have trained an outlier. Not all females respond well to Anavar. It is not fail proof. No drug is. But in 12 weeks, you're not going to see anything. In 16 weeks, you're not going to see anything. Probably in a year, everyday use, you wouldn't necessarily see anything dramatic. You might, but they're not going to do it nonstop. They're going to do 12-week preps or 16-week preps, on and off, on and off. But by the end of the year, because they're always trying to look that part, stay lean, stay in the gym, they're going to be doing more. They're going to giving themselves more exposure to the drug than probably needed. And what you're going to see is the exact same symptoms you'll see in a transgender therapy transformation. Hairline is going to start to change. Voice is going to start to change. Usually, the first thing that I've seen is menstrual irregularities start happening. That's already a sign that things are changing. What I've noticed with females that the clitoromegaly, like the enlargement of the clit, that usually what's happening first is just a lot of blood flow, almost like swelling. It's not morphologically changing yet. That's usually takes some pretty good durations and dosages. And yes, I agree. Most women, that's their number one fear. Yet, as soon as that sensitivity is increased, that's their favorite part about it. But what I normally see is the voice starting to change. Usually, it starts with a scratchy voice or almost a raspy voice. I would say if that is a concern at that moment, right then and there, you should pull the plug and probably things will revert back. But that's if you're paying attention. And all the females that I have worked with that have come to my or through my door from previous coaches that have been using drugs, none of them checked bloods, none of them monitored anything. They're just taking the coach's word for it. I have all my female clients literally measure a lot of different things, and one of them is their voice. Choose a phrase or a sentence, record it, and repeat it weekly, and see if you're noticing a change. There's software, free software you can put in your phone that will actually listen to the octave of your voice. Like, just run it through it and make sure it's not doing something you don't want to do, because you won't notice it. It's like everybody,
Yeah.
like you probably see this. Like, if you have a female or any client and they check their weight and say it's not moving all week, they're like, nothing's happening, nothing's happening. Like, well, let's look at pictures from 3 months ago. And now we're like, oh shit, look at all the change. Same thing is going to happen with voice, hairline, things like that. They're not going to notice it because they're looking constantly. But those things will happen. They have to happen, because that's literally, by definition, they are engaging in hormonal transgender transformation. By definition, though, and Anavar is not as androgenic as testosterone, it will still do the job. It will just take a little longer. So I think that women need to be very aware of what they're engaging in, and be very aware of the symptoms and monitor things closely.
Yeah, and when you hear that bikini girls start come out who compete in Olympia, hey, I take this, I take that, they assume it's just foolproof. And
Mhm.
you never know. You probably are. Well, if she's an Olympia, she is genetical outlier. She's most
For
likely
sure.
more resilient to any kind of side effects to begin with. Those who are not, you can see that very quickly as well. So,
Yeah,
what would be kind of a safe approach, if there even is one, for somebody? Let's say, what kind of bloods you would run, what kind of blood test would you look at, and what would you say to them? Hey, if you do really, really want to do this, these are the couple of steps you could take to minimize the damage. You already said, hey, record your voice. I have gone as far as said, hey, take pictures of your parts. I never want to see them. I don't care. But it would be
mhm.
good if you did kind of track that kind of stuff. So what would be your idea of kind of what they could track in
I
sense
don't
of
think I don't think
maintaining?
there's a I don't think there's a safe approach. There is no safe way to use drugs. Um, there are better ways, but you're running a risk no matter what. So I think right off the bat, females need to understand that and accept that. No matter what anyone tells you, the likelihood of a problem with Anavar, especially one course, realistically is not very high. It's pretty rare that there's a problem. I have seen one, literally coaching one right now, that had an issue with it. Um, but it's pretty rare. But it's still, you have to be accepting of the fact that there's no guarantees. From there, I would say you want to be looking at your blood work. I would be looking at Anavar can lower cholesterol. You'll actually hear some people say, well, you can use some Anavar, will lower your cholesterol. Well, it can lower your cholesterol, but it's actually lowering your HDL, which is the cholesterol we don't really want lowered, the good cholesterol, if you will. It will lower that, and it doesn't always lower the LDL. In fact, sometimes it actually raises it. So where someone's cholesterol levels would be something worth considering. Liver values, because it is orally available, or sorry, orally bioavailable, it will have an impact on the liver. Now, it is less hepatotoxic than a lot of other oral steroids, but it's still not a free ride. If there's a female that's big on social life with wine and alcohol, and they're considering Anavar at the same time, you need to consider the big picture here, because alcohol will hit your liver harder than Anavar. But now, if you're combining the two, it's still a possibility that you are getting into a riskier zone. Um, but other than that, like, I would always pay attention. I always encourage my females to check their sex hormones via blood work, anyways, because as soon as we apply an androgen, we are going to start to change things. I have been very meticulous with how I instruct my female clients to, if they are using anabolics, how, and we always do stuff very regimented. I have never yet seen a DHT compound prevent a cycle from coming when the cycle was due, the menstrual cycle I'm talking about, but it will stop it after. So what I mean is, literally every female client that is menstruating regularly, that wants to start doing this or has already been doing this, We wait until we know their cycle is due. We implement the compound, in this case, a DHT, and it does not prevent the cycle from coming. I have never seen it happen. But the cycles in the future that are meant to be, next in line, if you will, they're being missed. And that's the androgen starting to take its effect. Now, when we hop over to another drug compounds, like in the 19-OR section, I've seen it stop the menstrual cycle in its tracks. I've actually worked with a female adult film star that we use a 19-OR to prevent her cycle for filming, because you can pretty much count on that it's going to stop it. It's almost like an increase of progesterone continually increasing, where the body almost thinks it's in a pregnant state, and the menstruation just doesn't happen. So I think where they're applying that matters, and I would want to have blood work to correlate where hormone values were prior and then again after. And after that, I would just be making meticulous notes or observations of things like you mentioned, girl parts. I say the same thing. Look at that thing, inspect it, make sure you're not seeing anything you don't want to see. Measure your hairline, record your voice, just pay attention, because typically what you notice is bikini athletes that are competing, they're hanging around with like-minded individuals. They all doing the same thing, have the same habits. They all see each other every day. They don't notice each other changing. Where if we're talking with like a professional female athlete that's using Anavar, that's not on the bikini stage, she won't have that influence. So she'll be around her colleagues that aren't necessarily doing the same thing, or her family, and they'll be able to catch it quicker than the bikini athlete hanging around with bikini athletes. So I would say they need to do some pretty meticulous checks regularly to catch things when they first appear, and then decide if you want to continue risking this. But what happens is you have like the analogy that I was taught, which I think is fantastic, is you have all these effects. There's no side effects with drugs. There's effects we want and effects we don't want. Like the effects of Anavar, usually the females are using it for its muscle building abilities. But you have like this horse race with all these different horses are different effects that Anavar brings. And they all start at different points on the race. And what you want to do is get the horse with the effects you want to cross that finish line first, before the horses with the effects you don't want catch up. And they will catch up if you're not paying attention. So I think it's really important that really just detailed observations are being made.
So when you're looking at blood test, what kind of things would you see changing for sex hormones? And does it affect thyroid at all? Because often you see like, oh, it's leaning down, PED. So what's happening there?
Well, if it's going to lead into a menstrual disruption, you're going to see the effects of the missed period. You might even get menopausal type blood values from progesterone and estrogen, but it won't necessarily happen immediately. Hormones are slow movers, which I think is kind of interesting when you have a lot of people trying to fix their hormones with food. Like, you'll be fucking fixing your hormones with food for ages before that's taking an effect. But I don't want to go into that rant. As for the thyroid, that's controversial. There is some research and some anecdotes where people are noticing a greater conversion of T4 to T3. But there has been blood tests. I've seen both. I've seen that happen and I've seen it not happen. So I personally can't correlate, yes, 100% you will get a higher conversion of T4 to T3, but that's what people are referring to when they're talking about Anavar as a fat burning steroid. No steroids are directly fat burning, but they increase lean contractile tissue, which indirectly burns body fat. But there is some controversial research showing that there might be an increased conversion from T4 to T3, which would speed up fat loss. But I would not be using Anavar for fat loss. I'd be using Anavar for its anabolic properties if I was a bikini athlete. If you want fat loss and you want to use drugs for that, there's a lot better options than Anavar for sure.
Well, and the reason we are talking about this is because a lot of girls jump on this before they even learn how to train and eat and all those kind of things.
Yeah.
And going on that route, is there anything else that female kind of might prefer and try out instead of Anavar? Is there even anything remotely equivalent in over-the-counter supplement kind of selection that they could do to even come close to what Anavar can do?
From a muscle building standpoint, no, nothing over the counter is going to come close to touching an anabolic steroid. I think an over the counter supplement, the best thing an athlete has is creatine monohydrate, like from the 80s, like not fucking Purple K or pre-alkaline or all these fancy new creatines, just the good old monohydrate. That's about as best as you're going to get for a natural athlete trying to not, dabble into anabolics. But sorry, what was the other part of the question? I forget.
What other things they could look into?
Right.
So because you said some might respond really bad to it, but
Yes.
really still want to like fulfill their dream of becoming bikini pro. So is there anything even remotely safe, so to speak?
There's going to be a few other DHT compounds that are going to be very, very similar to Anavar. When you
I
think
believe
of
we both heard of this bikini chick specifically mentioning Masteron.
right, yes, Masteron. Well, now you're introducing needles to a bikini athlete, so I think that changes the game a little bit. um, but yes, it's being done. It has been done. Masteron's going to bring some similar qualities to Anavar and some new characteristics that Anavar does not bring that could be beneficial for a bikini athlete or any female competitive athlete because it's going to play on some of the other hormones like estrogen. Um, but when you think of the bikini slash wellness category, the North American girls are abusing Anavar, the South American girls are abusing Winstrol. And that's what you got. So just look at that. And Anavar versus Winstrol, that's what's going on. Because Winstrol is basically created right there where they live, and Anavar is what we've got here. They're very, very, very similar in both an androgenic and an anabolic score or rating. And in real life, that 100 to 100 ratio that I talked about, that was in theory, and it does not always apply to real life practical applications at all. But with Winstrol and Anavar, they're very, very similar. I've actually seen bikini athletes come to me from coaches that had them on both. Like, you're going to take 10 milligrams of Anavar and Winstrol. Why? What fucking reason would you need two of the same thing? But anyways, so there are other options if the female is comfortable with the risks that come with taking exogenous sex hormones, because that's what's going to happen if they're taking anabolic androgenic steroids. They're going to be altering their endogenous sex hormones, and that is relevant because the difference between a 10-year-old boy and a 10-year-old girl is not really anything until 10 years later. And it's that pubescent period that takes, a good decade to take a boy to a man and a girl to a woman. And now, if you take them before that, it's very hard. If I dressed a boy and a girl, identical, same clothes, same haircut, everything, it's very hard to tell them apart. But it takes that many years for those hormonal changes to impact morphologically that female or that male. So the females need to understand that. And if they're not willing to risk that, then I think there are far superior options from a risk benefit reward ratio. And I would say it would be things like clenbuterol and growth hormone, because we're not going to be playing on the sex hormone pathways at all. You're going to miss a little bit of the anabolic properties. It's not going to be as anabolic, but you're not going to have any androgenic issues at all. You're going to deal with other potential issues because it's going to play on your heart, your sympathetic system, and stuff like that. So it really kind of depends on what they are willing to do for this trophy. I'm not trying to scare anybody. I work with females that use this stuff all the time, and we use it very effectively. And none of my females look any less feminine. But it's because we're doing our due diligence to avoid masculinization. And that just really comes down to proper periodization, proper knowledge of the compounds, and proper usage of those compounds. And what we're seeing being advertised on social media is ridiculous. Like, I saw one girl saying she would choose Anavar over Primobolan because she would use Anavar as a pre-workout because it's oral. Like, I don't even understand the thought process behind using a fucking hormone as a pre-workout. But that's a whole new rant. But primobolan is another DHT that
But
would work.
in different areas as well, like strongmen taking orals before training, and you're like, what? I don't get it, but you knock yourself out. Is that helps you train harder?
Right, right. Like there are some anabolic PEDs that have an acute effect. Sure, we know this, but it's not for the bikini competitor or the guy going to the gym. Like uh, use these exogenous hormones to build muscle, and like Broderick says, you use stimulants to get your head out of your ass, and that's true. Like I don't think you could say that any better. So yeah, definitely there are potentially better options. There are safer options. But at the end of the day, it can be done very successfully with problems mitigated, possibly even avoided. But I think it's important that they understand the risk no matter what, and then choose, if it's right for them or not.
Would you say it's probably useful for you to tap into proper training, proper nutrition for at least a couple of years, if you have in mind becoming a pro athlete in bikini and whatnot, and understand if your body even responds to anything? And only then you start looking into, hey, maybe I need to touch on this, maybe I need to touch on that. Because what we see now is opposite. It is, same as guys. Like
Yeah,
I know so many people who will not go to gym unless they take drugs.
yeah,
And you, dude, you're a drug addict. You don't
yeah,
like you just drug addict. You like drugs.
yeah.
like
I agree.
if you
I agree
can't
with you
go to
100%.
gym without taking anything, you should never go to gym to begin with because you have some kind of mental disorder. So
I agree with you 100%. And I think like that would open up a whole new video. But I think learning how to train properly is part of the deal here. Like we need to know this. What happens with anabolic use is um, the females will get away with shitty coaching because the drug will build muscle no matter what. And so the coach will put you on the treadmill, take away your carbs, and give you Anavar, and you can only build muscle. You can't lose muscle given these drugs. They were designed for people that were losing weight from disease, and it was preventing that. So it's going to prevent you from losing muscle from being a fucking cardio bunny. So it's allowing coaches to get away with terrible, terrible coaching protocols. Um, it's also going to allow terrible technique to still grow muscle. But at the end of the day, what it's going to do as well is it's going to mask pain a little bit. You're not going to realize as well, or you're not going to be as sensitive to what's going on. And you could actually train yourself into an injury without even realizing it under the influence of anabolics. And when the anabolics come out, you feel it. And it can become a problem. I think that I'm a big fan of trying to get away with the least for the most amount of time. I'm not into fancy gimmicky things. I think it's just marketing. I would much prefer, and I've had many successful female athletes do very well at competitive levels without using steroids. It's not necessarily needed to
mm.
do this goal. It is needed to compete at the top level because they're all using it. And now they're fucking publicly admitting it finally. But that's a different story. Not everyone is in the top 10 of the Olympia yet. But to just get your feet wet, I think training technique is crucial because you want to make sure that you're not um, stressing unwanted tissues too much or to a biological breaking point. And you want to be able to build some muscle. And what you normally see with female bikini athletes from their coaches is 3 sets of 12, 3 sets of 12, 3 sets of 12, like all day long, all day long, all day long. But because under the anabolics, they will grow. They will grow. If they go to bed, they'll still grow. If I take a natural female and I say I want you to just do 3 sets of 12 all day long, her ability to build muscle is going to be very, very minimal, maybe close to none, especially if she's already been lifting, because it's just not the proper stimulus to get muscle growth. So now I take an anabolic and I bridge that gap big time, and I can get away with literally. I've actually been considering trying to do an experiment, just getting the right person with the right genetics to just literally don't even train, just get you lean and keep you on drugs. And I'll bet you with the right genetics, they would place, maybe even win, because training is the least relevant thing, in my opinion, when drugs are in play, if the genetics are there. I think that people should be training smarter, not harder, but everyone's trying to kill themselves. And then what's happening is the drug is just kind of giving them the crutch to do it.
Yeah, yeah. I think this was a great breakdown of everything, and like I said, we just wanted to touch up on, because it's frustrating that you see these girls coming out and they look all beautiful and dolled up and sound still feminine and this and that. But let's be honest, if they are in top 10 in Olympia, they are probably those lucky few who can get away with murder. Like, bright example is Ronnie Coleman. He probably could have done whatever the hell he wanted to do to his body, and he would still be Mr. Olympia because he would survive everything. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I'm mindful of your time. I appreciate you jumping on this, and we'll carry on in the next videos.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks.
Cool. Speak to you soon.